Greetings, brethren. I greet you all in the name of our Lord, the Righteous Branch. Welcome again to BSM TV, the channel where we study the last message of mercy, the last message of Revelation chapter 18 that talks about the setting up of the kingdom and other messages. As we all know, we now live in the last days, in the time of the 10 toes of the stage of Daniel chapter 2. And this is the time when we need to dig deeper into the scriptures, when we need to search the scriptures and to know what Christ is planning to do in these last days, so that we wait for the right thing. So without wasting our time today, we're going to learn about the precepts given to guard the Decalogue. We're going to learn about, this is our topic, the precepts that were given by God to guard the Decalogue. So I'm going to read the first quotation from 1 BC 1104.6. 1 BC 1104.6. It reads, precepts given to guard the Decalogue. In consequence of continual transgression, the moral law was repeated in awful grandeur from Sinai. So, as people continued to transgress the law of God, what happened is that the moral law was repeated from Sinai. It was repeated. Christ gave to Moses the religious precepts which were to govern the everyday life. These precepts were given by Christ himself to Moses. So these laws, they are not Moses' laws, as many people say, but they are laws that came straight from our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. These statutes were given explicitly to guard the 10 commandments. The Decalogue are the 10 commandments. So these precepts that we're going to discuss today were given by Christ to Moses so that they guard the Decalogue, so that they help us to keep the 10 commandments, so that we don't break the 10 commandments. Meaning, without those precepts or laws that guard the Decalogue, we cannot keep the 10 commandments. We will break them if we live without those precepts. It says here, these statutes were explicitly given to guard the 10 commandments. They were not shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ. So these precepts that we're going to discuss today, Sister Ellen G. White is saying here, they were not a shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ. Meaning, when Christ died on the cross, he did not abolish these precepts. They were not shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ. They were to be binding upon men in every age, as long as the time should last. So who nailed these precepts to the cross? It's the devil, because the spirit of prophecy here is telling us that they were a shadowy type. They were shadowy types. They were not shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ, meaning they are still binding. We need to keep them. It is the devil who destroyed them, who removed them when during the time of the dark ages. So these precepts that we're going to talk about today, they are the statutes. They are the statutes that are found in the book of Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23. I'm going to read Leviticus chapter 23 verse 2 here. Verse 1 says, and the Lord spake to Moses, saying, verse 2, speak to the children of Israel and say to them concerning the feasts. So the statutes are also called the feast. They are also called the precepts that were given to guard the 10 commandments. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them concerning the feast of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even convocations, even these are my feasts. So these statutes are God's feasts, and we should convocate, we should gather in order for us to keep them properly. Verse 23, chapter 23, verse 3 tells us about the first statute or the first precept or the first feast. It says, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So this is the Sabbath is the first precept which should be kept whilst people should convocate, thereby keeping it. So that's the first feast. Then we go on to Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4. It says, these are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which he shall proclaim in their seasons. There comes another verse that is telling us that these convocations should be kept in their seasons, meaning they have some dates which we should follow. We need to use God's calendar for us to keep them properly. They are holy convocations, and they should be kept they should be kept in their seasons, in the times that the time pointed out in the symbolic service. Then we have another feast here. The first one is the Sabbath. Then we have on verse 5, it says, in the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. It is the Lord's Passover. That is the feast that follows the seventh day Sabbath. It is also an holy convocation. This is the feast that comes in the first month of the biblical calendar. Verse 6 says, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. After the feast of Passover follows the week of unleavened bread. These are God's feasts. These are God's precepts that he gave to his people so that they guard the 10 commandments, so that they help us to keep the Decalogue properly and not to break the Decalogue. We have another feast here, another precept on verse 15 of Leviticus chapter 23. It says, and you shall count to you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So on the morrow after the Sabbath, after keeping the feast, during the feast of Passover, we count 7 Sabbaths. Then the 50th day is called the day of Pentecost. That is another feast that was not nailed to the cross. And even the disciples kept it in Jerusalem after the cross, after Christ had resurrected. It was kept after the cross. Therefore, it is the devil who nailed this feast to the cross. So these precepts are still binding, as Sister White has told us in her Bible commentary. I'm going to read again, still on Leviticus chapter 23. We have on verse 31. You shall do no more work. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So these feasts should be kept. It says throughout your generations. So it is the devil, as I've said earlier, who nails these feasts to the cross. They should be kept in every generation should keep these laws because they were given to guard the 10 commandments. Verse 34 talks about yet another statute, another feast. It says, speak to the children of Israel, saying, the 15th of day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days to the Lord. This has a date again on the 15th day of the 7th month, and it has to be kept on that very same date that the Lord has spoken. It is a place also where it is supposed to be kept. That is in Jerusalem. That is another feast that was given to the children of Israel, so that after keeping those, they'll be able to keep the Decalogue properly. So this Decalogue, as I have said earlier, the Decalogue are the 10 commandments of Exodus chapter 20. That's where we find the 10 commandments that tell us that you shall not make to you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. That is the first commandment. Then we have, you shall not bow down yourself to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of them that hate me. These are the commandments that we find in the Decalogue, which the spirit of prophecy has told us that in order for us to keep them properly, we need to first of all keep the precepts, keep the feast. How? Verse 20, verse 6, I'm going to read yet another commandment here, which says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That is the fourth commandment. I think we all know these 10 commandments that are found on the Decalogue. So I'm going to explain how the 10 commandments, the precepts guard the Decalogue. How do the precepts that were given, that are in Leviticus chapter 23, guard the what? The Decalogue. We have Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. Exodus 20, verse 10. For 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, and rested in the seventh day. While the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. 6 days shall work be done. It's still the fourth commandment being explained here. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. We read about the seventh day Sabbath on the first precept, or on the first statute in Leviticus chapter 23, where we were told that we should keep the Sabbath holy. But the issue we were not told in Leviticus chapter 23 about the issue of convocating. But when you go to Leviticus chapter 23, it says, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So the precepts tell us to convocate if it is the Sabbath day, but in the Decalogue, we were not told about convocating. So how does the statute which tells us to convocate, help us to keep the Decalogue? It makes it easier for us to keep the Sabbath because we are convocating at a church. It is easier to break the Sabbath when you remain in your homes and not convocate, because you end up switching off the television, switching on the televisions and watching some movies. You end up switching on the stoves before the sun sets. But if you convocate with others, it helps you to keep the Sabbath holy. It helps us to keep the Sabbath holy because there will be so many programs being done in a church, and there's no time to think about some things, some businesses, anything that has nothing to do with the Sabbath. So the precepts help us to keep the Decalogue. I'm going to read another quotation that talks about these precepts that were given to guard the Decalogue. There are so many people who are teaching that these Feast of Leviticus chapter 23 were nailed to the cross when Christ died. But we'll read some quotations that are going to show us that these statutes did not, Christ did not do away with them on the cross. There is this quotation here. Review and Herald, November 13, 1888. It says that the Holy One of Israel has made known to us the statutes and laws. The Holy One of Israel has made known to us the statutes and laws, which are to govern all human intelligences. So these statutes are very important because they govern all human intelligences. These precepts, which have been pronounced holy and just and good, they are holy, they are just, and they are good, are to form the standard of action in the home. So without them, how can we please God? No way. There is no way we can please God without having these laws. There can be no departure from them without sin. Can you hear this one, brethren? It says there can be no departure from them without sin. As soon as you depart from these precepts of the Lord, you sin against God. So there is need for us to keep on holding to them, for they are the foundation of the Christian religion. These precepts are a foundation of the Christian religion. So they are very crucial in our lives. They are very important. We cannot do away with these precepts. There's another quotation here that talks about these statutes or these precepts that were given to guard the Ten Commandments. There's a CG, page 512.1. It says, parents should feel it a sacred duty to instruct their children in the statutes and requirements of God, as well as in the prophecies. So it is the duty of the parents to make sure that their children understand properly these statutes. It is the duty of the parents to teach their children these things. Otherwise, they will not be part of the people who are going to be saved in these last days. They should educate their children at home and should themselves be interested in the Bible studies. So it is the duty of us parents to make sure our children understand these precepts. There's another quotation again that talks about these precepts that were given to guard the Decalogue. COL, Christ Object Lessons, page 289.3. Christ Object Lessons, page 289.3. It says, behold, said Moses, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me. It is God Himself who commanded Moses to teach people these statutes, that he should do so in the land whither ye go to possess. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So if you want to be great people and understanding people, there is need for us to hold fast to these statutes and keep them properly. Otherwise, the other nations will not call us a wise people and intelligent people. They make us wise people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him, and that nation is there so great? What nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? So these laws that God has given to us will make us great people if we keep them. We should stop the system of nailing everything that Christ says should be kept in every generation. Then we say it was nailed to the cross. We will never become a great people. And by keeping these, we become very close to God. As soon as we break these laws, we depart from God and become very far from God. And there will be no protection against all the evil things that are happening in this world. This is the time we're living in. So many things are happening. People have become so evil that we really need that protection from God. And so by obeying God, by obeying his commandments, by obeying the precepts, we will be protected against all the evils that are happening today in the world. There's another quotation again here. I'm going to read CE, page 220.1, still explaining on the the precepts that were given to guard the Decalogue, how important are they in our lives today? Should we nail them to the cross or should we continue to keep them? Were they Moses' laws and they died with Moses, or we should continue to keep them? These quotations are going to explain all that. CE page 220.1. It says, religion in the home. Religion in the home. There are some people who have a tendency of practicing religion at church only, but when you go to their homes, there is no true worshiping of God. They pretend before people. That is not right. Religion should begin in the home, and then when you meet, when you convocate, then there will be lesser problems. The light esteem in which the law of God is held. The light esteem in which the law of God is held, even by religious leaders, has been productive of great evil. Why is there so much evil in the world today? It is because many people, even religious leaders, it is because of the way in which they esteem the law of God. The teaching, which has become so widespread that the divine statutes are no longer binding. This is what every church is preaching today, that the statutes of the Lord are no longer binding. And that teaching, the teaching which has become so widespread that the divine statutes are no longer binding upon men, is the same idolatry in its effect upon the morals of the people. Can you see the effects of nailing God's feast to the cross? Those who seek to lessen the claims of God's holy law are striking directly at the foundation of the government, of families, and the nation. So, as you fight against the laws of God, you'll be fighting God Himself. We are not fighting the bearers of the message, but you're fighting God Himself. Those who seek to lessen the claims of God's holy law are striking directly to the foundation of the government of families and nations. Religious parents, failing to walk in His statutes, do not command their household to keep the way of the Lord. How can they tell their families when they are not walking in them? The law of God is not made the rule of life. The children, as they make homes of their own, feel under no obligation to teach their children what they themselves have never been taught. So the moment we teach our children, they will be able to teach their children also, and their children's children, their grandchildren. And then the message, the statutes of God will be kept in every generation. So we have to work to make sure our children understand these things. And this is why there are so many godless families. This is why depravity is so deep and widespread. Can you hear what the spirit of prophecy is telling us here? It says there are so many godless families. There are so many godless families, so many divorces, so many evil things being done. Why? It is because the precepts of the Lord are being set aside. They are not being taught. People are saying they are no longer binding. And so there are so many godless families. So we need to break back these precepts, and then we'll have happy families. We'll have a peaceful world. There's another quotation again here that is talking about the statutes. It says, it's CD, page 121.1. Counsels on Diet, page 121.1. It says, Christ has been the guide and teacher of ancient Israel. Christ has been a guide and teacher of ancient Israel. And He taught them that health is the reward of obedience to the laws of God. What is health? What makes people have to have a good health? It is because of obeying the laws of God. It comes as a reward of being obedient to God. The great physician who healed the sick in Palestine and had spoken to his people from the pillar of cloud, telling them that they must do and what God would do. for them. And if thou would diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, he said, and would do that which is right in his sight, and would give ear to his commandment and keep his commandments and keep his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee. Now we're being told of the advantages of keeping the laws of God. None of these diseases that many people are suffering in the world today will be put on the people of God who obey his precepts, who obey his commandments. I'll put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. So, obeying these precepts will give us a good health. Christ gave to Israel definite instruction in regards to their habits of life, and he assured them, the Lord will take away from thee all sickness. When they fulfilled the conditions, the promise was verified to them. There was no one feeble person among their tribes because of obeying the precepts of God. So we should stop nailing the precepts of the Lord to the cross because they are still binding. They are the ones that give us good health today. They protect us against a lot of things that are happening in the world. And there's another quotation here, HVN page 79.1. HVN page 79.1. It also talks about these statutes, these precepts that many are nailing to the cross. It says, the sacred statutes which Satan has hated. So Satan hates these statutes. And if you hate them also, then it means you are on the side. It's clear that you'll be on the side of the devil and not on God's side. It says, the sacred statutes which Satan has hated and sought to destroy. He wants them to be destroyed totally so that no one keeps them because he knows that as we keep them, it's for our own good. It's for our own good. These statutes which Satan has hated and sought to destroy will be honored throughout a sinless universe. This quotation is saying they will be honored throughout a sinless universe, meaning all the people that are going to be saved will keep these statutes in the sinless universe that is soon to come. So whether you nail them to the cross or you do whatever you do, still in future, God is saying they are going to be honored throughout the sinful universe. So you are working for the devil and you are not going to win. God is the one who is going to win this battle. Another quotation here was still just digging deeper and so that we understand about these precepts, how important they are. There's the Great Controversy. The Great Controversy, page 582.2. 582.2. It reads, in seeking to cast contempt upon the divine statutes, Satan has perverted the doctrines of the Bible, and errors have thus become incorporated into the faith of thousands who profess to believe the scriptures. So Satan is always trying to destroy these statutes, but he is not going to win. He is not going to win because in every generation there is a people of God who keep the laws of God, who love to keep the commandments of God. The last great conflict between truth and error is but the final struggle of the long-standing controversy concerning the law of God. Upon this battle, we are now entering a battle, even the laws of men and the precepts of Jehovah. The last war is going to be between the laws of men and the laws of Jehovah. Which laws are you going to keep today? Are you going to keep the laws of men or the laws of Jehovah? Choose you this day whom you will save. A battle between the laws of men and the precept of Jehovah, between the religion of the Bible and the religion of fable and the tradition that is not going to take us anywhere. We need to choose the side of the Lord because the God we serve is an eternal God, is an everlasting God Father. There's another quotation again, page 500, still on the Great Controversy, page 584.3. It says, wherever the divine precepts are rejected, whenever we reject the divine precepts of the divine statutes, sin ceases to appear sinful. Sin ceases to appear sinful, or righteousness desirable. So the moment you reject these precepts, you will never desire righteousness. You will stop desiring righteousness, and sin will cease to appear sinful. That's why you will see people sinning without even their hearts beating. They start doing all the bad things. They think they are doing that for God when they are actually working against the Lord. Those who refuse to submit to the government of God are wholly unfitted to govern themselves. Through their pernicious teachings, the spirit of insubordination is implanted in the hearts of children and youth who are naturally impatient of control, and a lawlessness, licentious state of society results due to rejecting of these precepts. Licentious, while scoffing at the credulity of those who obey the requirements of God, the multitudes eagerly accept the delusions of Satan. This is exactly what is happening today. Many are scoffing at those who are keeping the commandments of God. They give the reign of lust and practice the sins which have called down judgments upon the heathen. So this is a prophecies being fulfilled. Many are rejecting the precepts that were given by God to guard the Decalogue. God, what you should know is that God will win the battle. It is not the devil who is going to win this battle. God Himself is going to win it. EP page 236.3. Multitudes give ear to Satan's deceptions. Many are giving ear to Satan's deceptions. Only a few are listening to God's voice. And after giving ear to Satan's deceptions, they set themselves against God. But amid the working of evil, God's purposes move steadily forward to their accomplishment. Even if people work against what God wants to accomplish, He will still win. To all created intelligences, He is making manifest His justice and benevolence. The whole human race have become transgressors of God's law. On which side are you? It says here, many are transgressors of God's law. But by sacrifice of His Son, they may return to God. This is good news. Maybe you have been transgressing the laws of God. God has given you another chance. He's saying here, through His Son, we may return to God. That is why Christ died on the cross, so that we will find a way of returning back, of reconciling with our God. Through the grace of Christ, they may be enabled to render obedience to the Father's law. So, if you have transgressed the law, if you have been transgressing the laws of God and breaking the commandments, you can come back. So you can still come back to God through Christ by taking the emblems, by taking the daily communion, confessing that God, I have transgressed your law. Now I want to come back. His hands are always opened to receive those who want to start again. Through the grace of Christ, they may be enabled to render obedience to Father's law. In every age, we're still on EP page 236.3. It says here, in every age, God gathers out a people in whose heart is His law. So in every age, He has a people who keep His laws, in whose heart is His law. So don't be fooled thinking that everyone is breaking these laws, everyone is nailing these laws. The spirit of prophecy is telling us here clearly that in every age there's a people who have the laws of God in their hearts. There's another quotation here, still on EP. I'm going to read the last quotation that talks about these laws of God, that they are still binding, they still need to be kept. We cannot be saved whilst we nail these precepts that guard the Decalogue to the cross, we will not be able to keep the commandments properly. It says, EP page 237.1. EP page 237.1. It says, God's dealings with rebellion will result in fully unmasking the work so long carried out undercover. God is going to deal with this rebellion at last, and that is going to fully unmask the work so long carried out undercover. The fruits of setting aside the divine statutes will be laid open. This is going to happen in future. Don't worry if they are doing every bad thing against them, if they are cursing you, if they are scoffing, because you are teaching the precepts of the Lord. There is a time when God is going to deal with that rebellion. The fruits of setting aside the divine statutes will be laid open to the view of all created intelligences. The law of God will stand fully vindicated. So we need to choose God's side, because the law of God at last is going to stand fully vindicated. Satan himself, in the presence of the witnessing universe, will confess. The devil himself, whom you are supporting today by nailing the statutes to the cross, is going to confess in future. He is going to confess. It says here, the law of God will stand fully vindicated. Satan himself, in the presence of the witnessing universe, will confess the justice of God's government. He's going to confess the justice of what? Of God's government and the righteousness of his law. So why are you taking his side today, when he is in the future going to confess that the laws of God should be kept? The laws of God are righteous. There is need for us to choose the side of the Lord and keep the precepts that he gave to Moses, that he gave to us also, so that they guard the Decalogue, so that they help us not to break the 10 Commandments. That is why you see there are so many church boards, people breaking the 10 Commandments. It is because the precepts are being rejected. It is because the precepts are not being kept properly. As soon as we start to keep them properly, then we will be able to keep the Decalogue also properly. May God help us, so that when he comes to set up his kingdom, we're going to be part of it, because we're going to stop now nailing the precepts of the Lord to the cross. May God bless the reading of his word.
Meet in due season.